Today we're working on a Goodman Furnace. This is a big one too. This is probably about 100,000 BTU. And I'm going to shut the light off so you can see the flame. But you see how that flame is real yellow. So this unit itself has a bad heat exchanger. And I would guess that the heat exchanger is probably plugged up. Secondary heat exchanger is plugged up. When you're looking at this, you can see the flame is not totally going down the hole. Like where I've got that bit there, you can see that there's all that rust. There's also like this greenish yellow silhouette around there. So this is indicative of basically this motor can't pull enough pressure where all the flame sort of stays right here in the burn chamber. So it's real hot up here. And the idea is that the inducer motor is supposed to pull that flame all the way to the back of the furnace. It's hard to see it on the camera, but it's real yellow and it's not getting back there. So I'll also include a picture of the exhaust pipe. The exhaust pipe is just black, man. It looks like a diesel exhaust, I guess, or something. But you can see there's a fair amount of soot in there too. And then he's had sort of a condensate leak here. There's a bunch of black there as well. I don't know that I'm going to be able to film this. I didn't bring a tripod. If I can find somewhere I can put my phone, I'll try to do it, but I don't have a good answer for you. But I can kind of discuss what happens here quick. Essentially, we have to take this whole plate. You can see the plate here. This is all the heat exchanger, the whole thing. So first you got to take the initial stuff off. You got to take the inducer out. You got to take the burn chamber, and you can take the whole burn chamber out by disconnecting the gas. And then there's screws on the bottom of the burn chamber and on the top. You just unscrew that. That'll all come out, and we expose the heat exchanger, and then we can pull it out. It's not the easiest job, but it's not the end of the world. So it's going to take maybe an hour and a half, somewhere in there. So I don't know. I'll try to film it, but I don't think it's going to go real well. So.
All right, before we dispose of this heat exchanger, I just want to do kind of an autopsy on it. So in the beginning of the video, I showed you the furnace and how it was running. We saw that the flame was real sluggish. The gentleman that owned the house, he wanted to be a part of the installation process, which is totally cool. And he's kind of self-conscious of his home and the condition that it's in. So I figured I'm not even going to try to film it while I was there. So anyways, we are at this stage. He has a new heat exchanger. The heat exchanger is working great. The flame is fantastic on it. We dialed in the gas pressure. Everything is good. So I want to talk a little bit about this unit, and then I want to talk about what it means when we say that a heat exchanger has a plugged secondary heat exchanger. So just to start with, we'll kind of talk about the anatomy of the heat exchanger a little bit. So this is where the flame is. Oh, that light is super bright. This is where the flame goes in, right here. You can figure that each tube is roughly 20,000 BTU. This unit is a 100,000 BTU furnace, and you can see that adds up pretty much. Some units are a little bit different. Sometimes you get a 70,000 BTU unit that has 3, sometimes it has 4. It's hard to say, but basically what happens, this got bent in the removal process. Basically, the flame does not go down the tube properly. It ends up hitting this faceplate right here, and that's where you get all of that kind of corrosion. And then we also talked about kind of this yellowish green residue there. I don't know if the camera can pull that, but that also occurs there. I think it's sulfur that's being deposited, but I'm not positive. I don't know the chemical makeup of it. But anyways, the flame goes down these tubes, and we'll go to the side here. Flame goes down the tube, and it just follows the path. This is like a deflector shield thing, and of course it's in our way. We're going to go to the other side here. Goes down the tubes. The big tubes are called the primary heat exchanger, and then they enter this box on the back. I would call that the collector box or something. The front side is called the collector box. I don't know what they call the back side. And then it enters the secondary heat exchanger. That's these smaller tubes here. That's going to be the culprit where we are all plugged up, and we'll see that in just a second. So I'm going to try to take the front collector box off of this unit. I'm going to take the back one off, and then we'll be able to see kind of how that soot looks. and then talk about why that happened.
All right, in general, in HVAC, we use two different screw sizes. These are 5/16. We also use 1/4 inch. That's not present on here. We like these Malco bits. There's also a Klein bit, I think that is the same, but it is reversible. I can switch it to 1/4 inch or 5/16. It just makes life a little easier. So. And I took all the bottoms out already. I forgot to mention that the exhaust motor, the inducer motor, hooks up right here. So this is sucking outwards. It sucks through there, through the loops, and then comes out here. So now we're just going to open the collector box, and we can see just a huge amount of soot. All that, you can see that the tubes are really plugged up. Plenty of it on here. Not good. These little guys here, these are basically what I would consider a turbulator. I don't know the actual term that they use, but basically it's designed to swirl the exhaust, which just gets some more heat transmission. And you can see we're pulling that out, and there is just soot galore. I mean, that thing is... some of it is kind of like in chunks like that, just because there was water and it was sitting outside here for a good 5-6 hours, so it's froze. But I mean, you can see that there was just an amazing amount of soot in there. Amazing for me. Maybe it doesn't look amazing to you guys, but okay. So we saw the front side. Now I'm going to flip it around, do the back side, and we'll go from there. That's all of them. Okay. So we can just open this guy up. And look at that. Oh my gosh, that is just caked in there. Check that out. And then here's, I don't know if you can see that, but that whole chunk there is just all soot. So we can see, you know, there's tubes on the bottom here that can't even get, I mean, they're basically buried in it. They have no exhaust airflow at all. The tops have some, they could maybe work. And then the middle is so-so. I have had people ask me if you can clean these. If you are in a desperate pinch, you can clean these ones that are straight tubes. You could take all this apart, clean it out with a pressure washer, shoot water through them. We can't do it as contractors. You know, there's just a liability issue there. We can't touch them. It's either replace it or replace the furnace. This particular unit was only 15 years old. I believe it's a 2010 model. Generally speaking, most manufacturers warranty the heat exchanger for 20 years. And typically soot or cracks are included in that warranty. So this gentleman had the warranty. The warranty covered the heat exchanger. The heat exchanger on this particular unit was about $900, but the warranty covers that. And then we charged him about $600 for the replacement of the unit, of the heat exchanger. So the two questions I think people have when you talk about a heat exchanger is, number one, why did it happen? And then number two, you know, what can we do to remedy the issue? The most frequent cause of this kind of sooting is due to an air-fuel mixture issue of some sort. Either the unit was properly installed in the first place. So when you install a furnace, there's a gas valve, and you're supposed to alter the gas pressures so that it's burning appropriately. If you look on the inside of the furnace, it'll show manifold pressure on it, and you're supposed to match your furnace up with that. More often though, we see this on LP furnaces. This is an LP unit. And the problem with LP is, LP, for people that don't have LP, that's like a giant propane tank. It stands for liquid propane. You know, so it's just like a propane tank you'd find on a grill, but instead of being a 20-pound tank, it's a 500-pound tank or a 1,000-pound tank. They look like a big kind of bomb sitting in the yard.
And what happens is people, most often you get people that are, I don't want to say irresponsible, but you know, they get caught up with other things and they don't pay attention to the volume of it, and then the volume trickles down. When you're, like, let's say you're using an LP grill, you know, so you have a propane grill and you're cooking the burgers and the grill runs out of fuel, right? We've all had that happen. Grill runs out of fuel, and you take the tank out and you lift it up. You can still feel that there's fuel. Like if you shake it, you can feel there's some sort of liquid inside there. The problem is there's not enough fuel to sufficiently push it out and have that combustion. And that's the same thing that happens on these. So we always recommend people don't let the tank go under 20% volume. You know, we try to encourage filling the tank up at 30% volume, because once you get down to that 20% lower, the pressures just get all wonky and you start getting this kind of sooty buildup like this. You know, this furnace is 15 years old. This tank may have ran out, who knows? It may have ran out 30 times. You know, a lot of times guys like this, they have to fill the tank 2 or 3 times a year, and you know, the tank may have ran out 2 or 3 times a year. We don't know. You know, people try to be proactive with it, I think, but more often than not, the heat shuts off and they go check the tank and they say, oh shit, I forgot to get the tank filled. It seems like now the LP dealers are doing autofill programs, so I don't know how they're calculating who needs it. Some of them even have like an optical sensor that they put onto there's a gauge on the LP tank that says a percentage, and there's like an optical sensor that shows where that, you know, basically if that little gauge arm crosses the line, and then the company knows to come out. I don't know if they listen to it all the time. I don't know if the system works all the time, but more often than not, this is caused by that tank running out. We do see it on natural gas systems too. And you know, natural gas isn't perfect. Natural gas can have pressure irregularities. Natural gas systems have, you know, they'll have pressure regulators and stuff that don't always work. So it can happen on other systems, but this is frequently an issue in the country with furnaces. The 2 remedies are you replace the heat exchanger. You know, like I said, this costs the guy about $600 for us to replace this. Or you replace the furnace. Those are the 2 options. This particular unit was tripping its rollout switches, and I can show you, I have a furnace in the garage that'll show you where the rollout switch is, but it was tripping the rollout switches, and that means that temperature up in the burn chamber that we were looking at before was getting hot. You know, basically that flame wasn't traveling down. If this tube was clear and you were watching the flame, it would darn near get to this bend. In fact, this is probably the hottest part of the heat exchanger because that flame is hitting the end of these. I have seen it where if the flame is not set properly, these get red hot, and then they can actually, you know, basically erode to nothing from the flame. So the moral of the story is, if you have LP, try to make sure the tank is full. You know, I know they charge you a trip charge, but at least if it hits 30%, it's worth the trip charge, because then you don't have this. And then, you know, if the tank does run low and you start sooting up, you do have options. I see it a ton where HVAC guys don't want to replace these. They just want to sell a new unit. And I get that. You know, on this particular unit, $600 is pretty good. That's good money for a single guy company. But the big companies want to sell you a new product. So that's all I got there. Oh, I'll show you the rollout switches quick. This is a, oh shoot, I took it off of this one. This is a Carrier furnace. There was a rollout switch attached to these 2 wires, which was attached to this. And I can't remember what I was using it for, but I took the darn rollout switch off. I got another furnace over here. I got all these furnaces I'm saving for future video ideas, and they're really starting to plug up the garage here. Okay, this is, I can't remember what flavor furnace this is, but here's your burn chamber up here. And don't tell me I stripped that sensor off too. I swear I'm not reusing the sensors or anything. I guess I don't know why I took it off of there, but yeah, here. I think we had jumped the rollout switch just to get the guy through the night, is what I'm guessing. And I don't have a darn... I'll see if I have one somewhere here. Before I get away from this furnace, you can see here, we talked about how these get hot. You can see how these are real rusty. This particular unit had cracks in the heat exchanger. We can see right down here. And I wanted to make a separate video about cracked heat exchangers, but you can see, I think you can see that. There's cracks in there. And we'll talk about the symptoms on a cracked heat exchanger are a little bit different than a plugged heat exchanger. So anyway, let me see if I can find a switch. Okay, this is what a rollout switch looks like right here. So this is mounted on that burn chamber like we were talking about. It's got the two little wings, basically of power in, power out, and then there's a little button right here. So this thing, if it pops, you can reset it by pushing the button. Just makes a tiny little click, and then you can shut the furnace off, turn it back on, and it will cycle on again. This is basically just a fail-safe so that burn chamber doesn't get too hot. But yeah, I guess I must have taken it out because we were jumping that one too. You really shouldn't jump them. Jumping them is not a good practice. But you know, when it's 10 below zero outside, you don't want the house to freeze. So you got to do what you got to do. Anyways, I appreciate you guys watching this video. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe. Thanks for staying to the end, and we'll see what we come up with next.